When Jesus was walking around backcountry Israel, he was proclaiming one message over and over. God's kingdom is here. Through his own life, death, and resurrection, Jesus was making life in God's kingdom, the same kind of life he was living, available to us. This was the good news, or the gospel, that ordinary people like us can begin to live everyday life like Jesus. And this is the best kind of life there is, the good life, as some might call it. It's a life of conversation with God, joy that never stops, forgiveness for anything and everything, peace instead of anxiety, trust instead of fear, hope that will not fail, and love for others that never gives up, just for starters. A life radically different from anything we've ever known. But you might have noticed a gap between the everyday life Jesus made possible for us and the everyday life each of us is actually living. Maybe you believe Jesus forgave your sins, but beyond that, it feels like not much has changed, except maybe how you spend 1 hour on Sunday morning. That's if you can find a place to park. Many of us are simply not living everyday life like Jesus, and we wouldn't know where to start even if we wanted to try. We feel stuck in the same old habits and are beginning to wonder if the life Jesus described and lived is actually possible. But what if it still is? Jesus didn't just proclaim the gospel, drop the mic, and walk away, leaving us to figure out how to live this life by ourselves. He invited us to follow him, or in other words, be his disciples, an ancient word that simply means student or learner. Discipleship, then, is the process where ordinary people learn to live everyday life like Jesus. It's an ongoing, lifelong process that bridges the gap between the life each of us is currently living and the life Jesus envisioned for us.
Jesus called us to be his disciples, to be his followers. If you're here today, you are called to be Jesus' followers. If you believe in Jesus, if you believe in God, you're here today, and that's why God is calling you to be disciples, to be like Jesus, to live like Jesus, full of love, full of hope and peace and trust and forgiveness. The problem is sometimes some of us are stuck with our old self, right? We continue living the old self, like we continue to experience the fear, the anxiety, the disappointments, the unforgiveness, envy, lust, and other things that we call imperfections. So in the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk about these things. How to make an impact despite our imperfections. And we will be learning from the lives of the 12 disciples or apostles, if we call them, because Jesus appointed them to be apostles. Disciples is learners. Apostles are messenger, speakers, preachers. 12 ordinary people who lived an extraordinary lives. We're going to know on how Jesus turned their imperfect life, imperfections, to make an impact to the world. And you and I are impacted by that today. So in the next 4 weeks, this will be our path. Imperfect to impactful. Okay, that will be our message, and we will be talking about how these imperfect disciples became or incredibly impacted the world. And then next Sunday, we will talk about fear, how they were able to overcome all their fear and put their faith in Jesus. And then we will be talking about how these disciples become selfless servants of Jesus from being selfish, self-centered individuals. And on the last Sunday of this series, we'll be talking about how these disciples become doers of the word of God from being doubters. They doubted Jesus, they disowned Jesus. So that will be our journey in the next weeks to come. Have you ever entertained the thought that you are not good enough? Right? Have you ever thought that, oops, I'm not smart enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not good enough. I am not good looking enough. I am not equipped enough. If we entertain this thought, this will keep us from making an impact to our personal life, to our marriage life, to our family life, to our professional life, to our ministry life. This lie will paralyze us and will keep us stuck to our old self. We'll continue living with anxiety and fear and keep doubting God and all our imperfections. One of the Arnold shared last Sunday about Saul, who turned to be Paul, on his encounter when he became Paul, on his encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus. Some of us are not like Paul. Some of us are stuck and get hunted by our past. And this gives us an impression that because we have this past, we will not be good enough to do the things that God called us to do, to be the person that God called us to be. We are not forgiven by God. And that's the struggle that we have. That's why we can keep on living our lives with our past mistakes and living with our imperfections. Once we entertain this, it keeps us we cannot make an impact to this world. One of the particular reasons that kept me from serving God fully for the past years of my life before I really surrendered to Him this past 7 years is that I am not equipped enough. I was like, Lord, I cannot serve you fully because I'm not good in English. I'm still struggling until today how to speak in English. It's so easy for me to speak publicly in Tagalog, especially in Bisaya. Right? But in English, I still struggle with diction, with wrong grammars, and all other stuff. And that's what kept me from, Lord, I can't really fully commit my life to you. And sometimes I would also say, Lord, I don't have this formal training in the ministry or in seminary. That's why, Lord, I don't want to be a pastor. But of course, I'm working now with my master's in Christian apologetics. I hope I will finish it. Pray for me. I want to finish it before 2025. That's the field that I wanted to take. But that kept me from really serving God fully the past years before I committed myself to God. Like, I'm not equipped enough. I'm not good enough. And I would always say, Lord, can you just call someone, not me? Because they have a better past than me. I had a messy past. I had a terrible past. And that kept to my mind that I'm not good enough. And when I compare myself to other people, two things happen. Number one, I would be proud because I'm better than them. Or I would be insecure because they are better than me. That's why comparing ourselves with others is so dangerous thing to do. And many of you would think that, hey, those disciples of Jesus are actually perfect, holy, like saints. They're good enough to carry out the task that Jesus called them to do. If we look at the Lord's Supper hanging on the wall in our dining room, we would say, oh, these disciples of Jesus, they are like in this level, Jesus here, and they're in the next level. They're just lesser than Jesus. The truth is, no, they're not perfect. They're not even holier than the rest of us. They're also imperfect, ordinary people like us. Yes, they became heroes of faith. They died martyr for their faith in Jesus. But that was only after they surrendered their imperfection to God. Now, let's take a look with these disciples. These are the disciples that Jesus appointed. Simon Peter, whom he gave the name Peter. And this Simon is the most talkative disciple of Jesus. Or we could say that he was the most impulsive disciple of Jesus. He had many occasions where he disowned Jesus. He had many occasions where he denied Jesus. And he went out of focus he tried to walk on water, and then there is a storm. And then he almost got drowned because he's so impulsive. He's like, oh, I will follow you. He's even the one that says, oh, Jesus, whatever will happen, I will not deny you. But he denied Jesus. Imperfect disciple. Jesus knew that Peter would deny him, but still he appointed Peter to be the leader of the church. He's like the rock. His build is like a big guy, and that's why he was called the rock of the church, Peter. And there's also what we call, but imperfect, talkative, impulsive, dive in right away, not without thinking. James and John, these are mama's boys. Okay? They asked their mama, can you go to Jesus and ask Jesus if we can sit to the right and to the left and we will have positions in heaven? Self-centered disciples of Jesus. They are fishermen like Peter. Selfish people. Ordinary people. We also have what? Andrew. Andrew is the older brother of Peter. He was one of the disciples who was also missing in actions when Jesus was arrested. imperfect disciple. He also abandoned. Oh, by the way, Andrew abandoned John the Baptist. John the Baptist was the discipler of Andrew. When Jesus called Andrew, come follow me, and just he abandoned John the Baptist right away and followed Jesus. And then eventually he also abandoned Jesus after Jesus was arrested. Andrew is a typically quiet guy. He's a very simple guy. He's a quiet guy, but he's a thinker. Some of us here are quiet and we find ourselves that we are not good enough. Just like Andrew. But Andrew made a total difference and died for Jesus. Another ordinary person, a fisherman, not like well-educated person. We also have Philip. Philip is actually the who always second-guess himself. When Philip is the spokesperson to the Greek, and then there was some Greek that wants to see Jesus, and he was like, wait, Andrew, can you come over here? Can you help me? And then Andrew and Philip went to Jesus. He always second-guessed himself. He was like, I don't think I can do this. Give me a task. I don't think I can do this. So he always second-guessed himself. He's incapable of doing something without the other person. He's an ordinary person, imperfect person like you and me. And like a fisherman also. We have also Bartholomew, or what they called Nathaniel. This guy is another fisherman because of his group of friends are all fishermen. In John 1, verse 46, we have found that so Jesus went to Philip. He was like, Philip, come follow me and I will make you fishers of men. And then Philip, to his excitement, he went to Nathaniel or Bartholomew. He went to Bartholomew and he said, hey, Bartholomew, we found the one that Moses wrote in the law and the prophets wrote about. He is the Jesus of Nazareth. He's the son of Joseph. We found him already, the Savior of the world. And then you know the response of Bartholomew? He just said that, can anything good come out from Nazareth? Philip was so excited. Hey, come on, join us. Be Jesus' follower because he is the one, the answer, who can save us from all this mystery or misery. And then Bartholomew said, really? Can anything good come out from Nazareth? Out of Nazareth? Very pessimistic person. Very negative thinker. And that's what many of us today. Ordinary people, ordinary person, imperfect, even pessimistic in thinking and negative thinker. Another one, who is this? Matthew, of course, the tax collector. If you're a tax collector during the time of Jesus, you are greedy. Because during the time of Jesus, tax collection is franchise-based. You have to buy the franchise. So for example, in Edmonton, I have to buy the franchise for Edmonton. I'll be the one collecting all the tax for Edmonton, and then I will remit it to the Roman government. That's how it works before. And Matthew must be a very greedy person because it means that if you collect tax, it takes a part of it, and then before you take money from your own people, the Jews, and then you take your part before you endorse it to the Roman government. Greedy, imperfect person, right? And well, he must probably the most intelligent, or not most intelligent, but well-educated during the time, or the richest one, but he is also imperfect like you and me, or probably the greediest person in the disciples of Jesus. Thomas, he is also known as the doubter. He always second-guessed Jesus. And before Jesus was, I will only touch the hole in Jesus' palm, I will believe in him. That's Thomas. He keeps on doubting anything. One day in John 11, when Jesus wanted to go to Bethany to see Lazarus and to raise Lazarus from the dead. And then the disciples opposed that because there's a danger waiting for Jesus there. And Jesus, really, Jesus, no, I don't mind all the danger. I want to go see my friend Lazarus. And then Thomas said, hey, let's go with him so that we might die with him. It's not a statement of courage. It's actually a statement of sarcasm, sarcastic, negative thinker, pessimistic. That's Thomas, imperfect disciple of Jesus. And then one day in John 14, he went to Jesus and he said, Jesus, we don't know where to go. Can you tell us the way? And then Jesus was like, you've been with me for 3 years already and you didn't get it? Thomas. And then John 14:6, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. 3 years, seeing who Jesus was, raising the dead, healing the sick, casting out demons, and Thomas would always ask, Low comprehension skills. Disciple of Jesus. Aside from being pessimistic, sarcastic, or doubtful person, low comprehension. Ano nang nangyari? Diba? What happened? No, everyone got it already. Thomas didn't get it. Diba? Low comprehension skill. Oh, James. James is the son of Alphaeus. James is another one. James the lesser. James, the brother of John, is the greater. James is the lesser. James is someone not really less in nature, but less in height or less in age. They gave people or disciples of Jesus a nickname during the time. There's not much mention about James the lesser, but he was one, we know, he was one of the disciples that disowned Jesus, abandoned Jesus. Thaddeus, or what they call Judas, another term because there's two Judas already. That's why, the same with James. There are two James, that's why James the great, or son of Zebedee, James the lesser, so that they would distinguish. Thaddeus is another name, Judas. Judas, a son of James, not the James, but another father named James. He was a zealot. A zealot before, during the time, is like they could call them a terrorist. They would always have a little dagger on their side because they want to kill any Roman soldier. Murderer. And he completely opposed the Roman government. And that also same with Simon. Simon the zealot. And these are the disciples of Jesus whom he called, whom he appointed to be his apostles, to be the messenger, to be the preacher all over the world and impacted the world. Simon the Zealot is also opposing the Roman government. Both of them abandoned Jesus. Of course, the famous one is Judas Iscariot, whom replaced by Matthias after his death. He denied Jesus. But he is actually the most intellectual man in the disciples of Jesus. He managed the money of the disciples. He's very practical, economically. He's very logical. He's smart. He's the smartest among the disciples. Jesus knew that Judas will betray him, yet he still appointed him. Jesus knew that Simon Peter will deny him, yet he still appointed him. Jesus knew that the rest of the disciples would disown him, yet he still appointed them. God is not focused on our imperfections. He appointed us based on our willingness to be with him. These people are ordinary, imperfect people. Fishermen, tradesmen, laborers, terrorists, self-centered, egoistic disciples of Jesus. None of them were renowned for a scholarship. None of them are theologians. None of them are philosophers. None of them are highly educated persons. They're ordinary, imperfect people like you and me. They have their own flaws and weaknesses. Yet Jesus appointed all of them and used them to make an impact to this world. My life was impacted by them. The fact that you're here, your life probably was impacted by these people. So the next time you would think that I'm not good enough, rebuke that lie. It's not true. You're good enough. There's just one requirement that Jesus wants you to do so that you will make an impact to the people around you. God used these imperfect people. He can use you too. What is the requirement? Let's go back 2 verses prior to this verse. In verse 14, he said, he appointed the 12 imperfect, ordinary people so that they would be with him. And he could send them to preach and to have authority to cast out demons. These are the tasks. But primarily, Jesus appointed those imperfect disciples, those ordinary disciples, to be with him. That's the main purpose of Jesus. These are just secondary purpose, that they would be able to preach and send or continue the message of Jesus and to cast out demons, heal the sickness, and be a blessing to many people. We find ourselves not good enough because we are too focused on the task. I'm not good enough. I'm not that good singer. I'm not that good leader. I'm not good speaker. That's not what Jesus wants you to do. Jesus wants you to be with Him. And only by then that we can make an impact to the people around us. Jesus is not asking us to have some revolution and to make these major changes in our lives. Like Jesus doesn't want us, really not expecting us to have a huge step of faith and a huge change in our lifestyle. He just wants us to be with Him, and the rest will follow. Imperfect people like you and me, Jesus appointed them to be with Him. And then the rest will follow. The task of preaching and having the authority to cast out demons will follow. The primary purpose of Jesus is for us to be with Him. And only by then we can make an impact to this world. Let me put it this way. We are imperfect people. If we stay with Jesus, live with Jesus, be like Jesus, we can make an impact this world. You know, Jesus can choose the more intelligent person. Jesus can choose the more educated person. Right? Jesus can say, okay, look at this judge Sanhedrin. I'll make the water into wine. And then the Sanhedrin, one of the judges in the city, would say, wow. And then he will become a Jesus follower. But Jesus is not after that. He can look for a good-looking people. He can look for a more influential people. Look for a higher status in the society people. But that's not what Jesus is looking for. He is looking for someone who is willing to be with Him. It's so loud. He's looking for willing to be with Him. Willing to be with Jesus. God can only work in your weaknesses if we are willing to surrender and trust our weaknesses to Him. God can only work with your imperfections if we are only willing to surrender our imperfections to Him. And that includes our past mistakes. And that includes our hurts, our blatant disobedience to Him, and all other imperfections that we have done in the past. God can turn those things and make it an impact to the people around us once we are willing to be with Him. And being with Jesus means we have a personal relationship with Him. Being with Jesus means that we have accepted His love, His forgiveness, His mercy and grace. We are able to establish a personal relationship with Him. Do you have a personal relationship with Jesus? Is Jesus your God? Is He someone that you can run to whenever you have a problem? Being with Jesus is also a daily conversation with Jesus. For some of us here, I'm not really into reading the Bible. How can you survive in your relationship with Jesus? Maybe try something that you can listen to the Bible. Our relationship with my wife will not grow if we don't have that regular conversation. That's same with our relationship with God. If you and I want to make an impact to this world, we have to have a daily conversation with Jesus. And that's through Bible reading and prayer. Being with Jesus is also becoming and living a life like Jesus. In words, in attitudes, the way we live our life, the way we perceive things, the way we make decisions. In other words, in everything we do, we must be in accordance on how we live our life for Jesus. Only and only by then that we can make an impact to this world. Our personal life, our marriage life, our family life, our ministry life. Our willingness to be with God is a way for God to work in our weaknesses. Our willingness to be with God is a way for God to work in our weaknesses. God cannot work in our lives if we are not willing to surrender our lives to Him. I remember the time, I'm not sure if I shared this already, but we were having a dinner here with my family in Mayfield. And then I was talking with the waiter, and the waiter was sharing with me, what's that name? I have that logo with the Life Community Church. Oh, this is our church. And he started the conversation. I was able to share with him, you know what? Do you believe in God, James? Oh, James is his name. No. And my son is sitting between me and my wife. And I was just talking with James. You know what, James? Me too. I don't believe in God. I was imperfect person before. Not the word imperfect, but I was a bad person before. I had I smoked. I was addicted to alcohol. I was addicted to gambling. I cheated here and there, and that was my life. I was so bad. But when I encountered my life with Jesus, so I was just sharing quickly while he was asking me to pay the bill. I will not pay the bill until you listen to me. So I was sharing quickly. And when we get home, we're on our bed. My son, he always sleep with me, and he asked me, Dad, why did you tell that waiter or server earlier that you're bad? So, oh, and then you told him that you smoked before, Dad? I was like, you said that you cheated before. So I was able to share with my son. It's like, you know what, son? Yeah, Dad was imperfect. Dad was bad. And then he also listened and told me that, yeah, I heard that you were sharing God to him. And I was so excited sharing that to my son because he was able to hear how my imperfections, God turned it into something that impact some other people's lives. I said to him, no, you know what, son? Jesus turned my imperfections to make an impact to people. Jesus turned my messy past to be his message of love and forgiveness to people. And that's why I'm not bad anymore. And then Kayla said, then we continued talking and he went to sleep. My point is that conversation would not happen if I were not willing to be with Jesus. God changed my life. Jesus changed my life. And he's using my imperfect life in the past to have an impact to that waiter, to my son who was with me in the bed. And Jesus required only one thing, our willingness to be with him, moment by moment. God called and used ordinary imperfect disciples. He can also use you. He can also change you. He can also change your imperfections to make an impact to this world. You just have to be willing to be with him. After a few years after this, Jesus was already died or rested, died, resurrected, and ascended to heaven. And then, Peter, the leader of the church, John, Andrew, James, and the rest of the disciples started making an impact in Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the world. On some occasions, there's a member of the Sanhedrin, that's the Supreme Court of a city in Israel during the time. Member of the Sanhedrin and the temple guard sees and question James, Peter, and John. And they started questioning them. They were bothered because these disciples, imperfect disciples of Jesus, are making impact already. They were bothered because 5,000 believe in the message of Jesus during that day. And they know there will be more coming. Thousands and thousands and now millions of people know Jesus, live their life for Jesus because of the message of these imperfect, ordinary people of God. So one occasion, the members of the Sanhedrin asked them, on what power and authority are you doing these things? And Peter, filled with the Holy Spirit, and he was so empowered, and he spoke and answered with boldness. Salvation is found in no one else. For there's only one name who can save anyone. Everyone. And that's the name of Jesus of Nazareth. And to their surprise, this is what Dr. Luke wrote. And he said, Dr. Luke said that in one occasion, when the men of the Sanhedrin, these are the Jewish high court, composed of 21 to 23 Sadducees and Pharisees who make decisions for the Jews, saw the confidence. What's these Peter and John, they were so bold. How dare you to talk to me like that? I'm the judge of the part of the Sanhedrin, and there are people at the temple guards surrounding you, and you're talking to me like that. Confidence and boldness of Peter and John. And they grasped, what's with these people? The fact that they were uneducated. Peter and John are untrained, ordinary men. They were astounded. They were amazed. How dare you to speak to me like that? Why you're so confident and why you're so bold in talking to me like that about Jesus of Nazareth? And then they began to realize, they began to recognize, oh, the reason that these two guys, Peter and John, are making impact to this world today, the reason that they were able to preach the gospel with boldness and thousands of people came to know Jesus is because they had been with Jesus. They had been with Jesus. The imperfect, self-centered, egoistic disciples of Jesus made an impact to this world because they had been with Jesus. They spent time with Jesus. God used this uneducated, untrained, imperfect to make an impact to this world because they had been with Jesus. Now I want you to imagine one day your family members, your kids will tell their kids, you know what? The reason why I love God and love my family is because your grandfather, your grandmother made an impact in my life. And the reason why they made an impact is because they had been with Jesus. And I long for that day to come, that my sons or my future kids would share with their family members how I impacted their life in knowing God and how I impacted their life in loving their family. You can also turn your imperfections to make an impact to your circles of friends, your loved ones, your family, your co-workers, the people around you, your friends. There's only one requirement. His requirement is be with Jesus. We are all imperfect. You have a choice to stay imperfect and not make an impact, or you can use your imperfections to make an impact. One requirement is be with Jesus. Out of nowhere, my former co-worker messaged me. And he said, Jeff, how are you doing? I said, okay, everything's good. And how are you doing? It's been a while. And my co-worker said, you know what, I have a problem. And I've been thinking of messaging you last week, but I was hesitant. And I only thought of one person who can help me and will not judge me. I was like, what? So she's a lady. So I messaged my wife for accountability with all the screenshots that we were talking. And I said, she knows about that person. She has a problem. She said, yeah. Oh, and I met her, okay, in public place. So we met, we talked about her problem and all. And I said at the end, I will not share the problem, but at the end I said, you know what, thank you for your trust. And I never thought I made an impact to my co-worker. She's a non-Filipino. And I was just thought, wow, if I live my life to be with Jesus, He can make my life an impact to other people. And He can use you too. The same as He used the imperfect disciples. The same as He used someone like me. You're better than me in any ways. And God can use you. The same as He used me. His only one requirement is be with Him.